Welcome to the Barren Global Channel. Marines of the Russian Black Sea Fleet made a big landing on the Snake Island at night. Ukrainian artillery hit the Snake Island very hard. The Ukrainian armed forces also achieved great success during the bombardment. Experts also stated that the Ukrainian soldiers gained a great deal of experience during the war. At night, the infantry of the Russian Navy made a landing on the island of Crimea. Local sources also stated that small groups are returning to the island. UAV of the Ukrainian army constantly followed the movements of the Russian army on the Snake Island. After the Ukrainian drone gathered intelligence on the region, Kyiv launched a massive attack. The attacks were unusual because the range of the guns used by the artillery of the Ukrainian army could not hit the Snake Island. Ukrainian artillery was still able to hit Snake Island. Using Caesar cannons with a range of 40 kilometers, the Ukrainian army successfully hit the island of Crimea. Military analysts stated that the Ukrainian army calculated an extra 10 kilometers to hit this place, and then they were able to hit the area with their artillery systems. Thanks to the experience gained during the war, the Ukrainian soldiers were able to hit their targets even with systems whose range was not enough. The French-made Caesar artillery systems have been used by the Ukrainian army since the beginning of the war. Ukrainian soldiers have used these systems so much that they can now hit even the hardest-to-hit targets. Experts say that it is very difficult for Ukrainian troops to hit the island of Snakes right now, because it is also in the middle that the bombardment is very difficult due to the weather conditions and the distance. There is always a margin of error in artillery shots. The Ukrainian artillery calculated this margin of error and hit the Snake Island. The infantry of the Russian Navy left the island again as a result of the attacks. This is how this great landing of the Russian Navy came to an end. Russia continues to be seriously injured in the Ukraine war. The Russian army, which faces different problems every day, experienced another big problem this time. Russia had brought its medical units to the borders of Ukraine at the beginning of the war. Now, the Russian army is having a hard time finding military medics as Russian troops lost too many soldiers and equipment in the war. The Kremlin embarked on a new search due to the inadequacy of the medical units in the war. Because of the victories that could not be taken on the field, Russia took a new action. Negotiations at the table came to a halt after Russian President Putin ordered the strategic points of Ukraine to be hit. The Moscow administration, which has a trump card near the end of the Grain Corridor Agreement, is said to have gotten what they wanted on the table. Confessions came from the Russian authorities in the face of these developments. He noted that the army had very few doctors. One of Russia's leading politicians announced that the Russian army does not have enough doctors, among other problems. Leonid Slutsky, chairman of the Committee on Foreign Relations at a party in Russia, wrote that as the defeat of Russian forces on the battlefield increased, the problems within the army were considered unusual. The absence of the medic, one of the most important units in the war, means the closure of that front. Currently, the decrease in the medical units in the Russian army has been the main reason for the stopping of the Russian soldiers' attacks in the region. However, the problem in the Russian army is so great at the moment that the Russian soldiers are considering pulling back the defense lines even more due to the inadequacy of the medics. The decrease in the medical teams in the army also significantly reduced the motivation of the Russian soldiers. While the war is going on at full speed, the stocks in the Russian army's inventory are about to run out, and the Ukrainian army has melted the artillery system due to using too many artillery systems. The British Ministry of Defense has updated the intelligence it obtained in the war. Russia is probably removing nuclear warheads from obsolete nuclear cruise missiles and firing unarmed munitions at Ukraine, the British update said. The ministry based its intelligence on the remains of the 1980s S-15 Kent missile shot down by Ukraine's air defense. The Russian army has officially removed the nuclear warheads. It turned out that the nuclear explosive of this air-launched cruise missile was removed. Experts said, although such missiles hit the target, they cause very limited damage. Russia may be hoping that the missiles will deceive Ukraine's air defenses by acting as decoys and divert attention. But whatever the intent, This improvisation underlines the depletion level of Russia's long-range missile stock, experts said. The Russian army is currently making long-term defensive lines on the Eastern Front due to insufficient equipment. Russian defense lines include ditches, trenches, and bunkers. It is also estimated that the shelters were made of special reinforced concrete to protect them from bombardments. While the Ukrainian army uses a large number of tanks, the Russians also use square pyramidal concrete in their defense lines. The anti-tank ones of these concrete pyramids of the Russians are also called dragon teeth among the people. On the other hand, the authorities gave the good news for Ukraine. Petro Kotin, head of the national nuclear power company Energoatom, reported that there are signs that the Russian military is preparing to leave the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Putin also confessed. The Russian president delved into dreams, saying that the Ukrainian operation should be launched earlier. It has also been claimed that President Vladimir Putin is preparing to declare a new mobilization in Russia, which has not yet reached the point he had hoped for since the beginning of the war. In Russia, speculation is swirling that Vladimir Putin will demand a major mobilization move in a desperate attempt to stop Ukraine. The move comes after Zelensky warned Moscow that Russia must withdraw from all controlled territories in order to find a permanent solution to the war. Allegations of such a large-scale mobilization arose because the already more than 300,000 conscripts were not enough for the war and Russia was unable to achieve its goals. Russian sources say the movement will most likely be combined with martial law in key cities, including Moscow. Putin thinks it is enough to mobilize about 2 million more, the General SVR Telegram channel announced. The mobilization is expected to begin in January. While the problems of the Russian army increased, there were big explosions in the Donetsk region. Currently, the military activity of the Ukrainian army continues in the Donetsk region in eastern Ukraine. While there were hot clashes in the countryside of Bakhmut city in the Donetsk region, intense mobility of the Ukrainian army soldiers emerged behind the front. BM-21 Grad rocket systems belonging to the Ukrainian army began to be used actively in the region. At least 15 explosions occurred in Donetsk as a result of firing from rocket launcher systems in the area. A massive bombardment has been launched on Donetsk. It is also stated that Russian military camps were hit in the explosions in the form of thunder. Leader Zelensky also made a new request from the European Union during the course of the war. President Zelensky stated that European Union countries are trying to prepare new sanctions to reduce the price of Russian oil up to $65 a barrel, but this is not enough. Zelensky thus made a new request from the European Union countries. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky made a statement to other officials about the course of the war in his speech at the International Forum on Grain from Ukraine held in the capital Kiev. Zelensky, who made the opening speech of the forum, which was attended by the prime ministers of Belgium, Poland, and Lithuania, and the president of Hungary, Katalin Novak, stated that he was pleased that the forum was held in Kiev. Zelensky said, "So far, nearly 500 ships have left our ports. This means 12 million tons of agricultural products for 40 countries of the world and for all societies." Zelensky stated that he thanked President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres for their important contributions to the creation of the Black Sea Grain Corridor. We'll see what happens in the coming days. We have come to the end of another video. By subscribing, you can easily follow new videos. I wish you all happy days. See you.